You ready to rock and roll?
Yep.
Okay, let's fire away. So trusts, estates, funds and corporations. Some of these we've covered before, some of these things we haven't, but we're going to go through these in step. Okay, so, yeah, let's go. Okay. All right. So I want to start, given that we left the last session fairly depressed, by starting on why bother, okay? And I want to go through this because when you do finish that question and you do raise people and you think to yourself, well, why, if the world has no rule of law, if there is no justice, if there is no due process, then why really should we be going through any sort of detail on estates, trusts, or creating seals, or any of these things? And this is why I want to get to the heart of it. Running away or pretending evil doesn't exist only strengthens evil. And this is really a test of time. We've got to accept that. If we have children or we have cousins, if we have friends, if we have family, if we have any sense of legacy, we've got to accept the fact that whenever we're faced with problems, evil is never resolved by ignoring it or pretending it's not there. Fighting without thinking. There is, all over the world and in places like Australia, like America, like Canada, like England, people who have, are and may be thinking about occupying Wall Street or getting into protests or really manning the barricades and feeling that they're out there actually doing something. The point is that fighting without thinking, fighting without preparation, again, only strengthens the status quo. They want people to do that. You know what Occupy Wall Street did, sadly, is take a large number of people in America that were really concerned, put them in a place for weeks with no preparation, with no leadership, with no strategy, with no outcome, disheartened them, broke their spirit, and then put them back years from where they were. The system wants that. It needs that kind of belligerence in order to justify its position. Competence, honour, humility are powerful tools. Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, whomever we talk about, leaders in the face of overwhelming odds of evil, have proven time and time and time again that if we stand up in honour, competence, then you can change an enormous amount. And it doesn't always have to end up, you know, being nailed to a piece of wood or some negative thing. I mean, you can find peace and happiness in spite of how dangerous the world is. Getting your affairs in order at least can reduce the levels of harassment. This is what I say to people. When people say, oh, I've got a parking fine or I've got an issue here or an issue there, I say, look, if you have the means to pay it, pay it. Pay it. Not because, and it doesn't mean that you are now becoming a supporter of the system. It's reducing the level of harassment. One of the great disinformation successes in America is encouraging so many people to fight on not driving with number plates and not driving with licenses, which have made it easy for the system to take them out of the equation, to harass them, whereas it would have been far more dangerous for the system if those people became organised, ran election campaigns, you know, started to challenge issues of financial malfeasance. Instead, they all got stuck on the minor issues. As you demonstrate respect and honour and truth, it helps all who see your act. The greatest influence you can have with law are those who are supposed to be professional in law, officers of law. I have an example of an assistant judge in Canada who wrote a piece last year. It was a very arrogant piece. It was a piece that was about looking at the whole sovereign movement, and my name and what we did was involved in his whole treatise. I won't name his name, but it was all about saying, well, the sovereign movement, and this is all kind of conspiracy and antisocial. And I wrote a response to that on one of the blogs about what he did and highlighted the inconsistencies and the arrogance and the lack of competence in the way that he was approaching his argument. And then this year I heard from someone in Canada who went before this particular justice on a major matter, and he demonstrated before that justice competence, honour, respect. He knew, the judge knew, that this man knew the law, and this man did not in any way upset the judge or disrespect the judge or cause any great scene. That judge wrote a letter of thank you for what he did. And in the space of a year and a half, a man in a very senior position in law in one country appears to have a broader view and a broader respect for people who are not here to be antisocial, who recognise they have to make a contribution in society, but they're merely looking for a restoration of law, of rule of law. You can make a difference. You can absolutely make a difference. And history tells us that a few motivated people can make a massive difference. And for the future of this planet, rule of law and justice need to be restored. Now, I'll raise it now. You're not alone. We are not islands here. July the 11th of this year, Pope Francis issued a legal edict, the highest legal edict in the planet, called Motu Proprio. That's its title. That's what it's called as an instrument. And what he said, in effect, was that no one within the jurisdiction of the Vatican is above the law. And when you consider that all law in the world, Western Roman law, is based on the Vatican being the top of the pyramid, that means everyone who's an officer, everyone who's an officer of the law. But beginning with the Vatican, in action from September the 1st, we have seen a changing of the guard and a re-establishment and so far a firm commitment, by the way it's moving forward, that they are genuinely seeking a restoration of law. Now, given it hasn't been around for a long time, it ain't going to happen if only people from the top down try. There's a lot of cobwebs in the system over the last 1,000 years. But you're not alone, and this is not a futile effort. Okay. So, we're going to move through some of these things fairly quickly, but we'll see. Right of use. Right of use is the concept. You can't hold your home, but you can certainly hold a piece of paper or a concept that says the right of use of the home. So we're back into the fictional world. Thank you. Okay. Now, I've spoken about trusts over and over and over. And the more you study and the more you read, thankfully sometimes the clearer things become. And here's one with trust. I'm going to read this out because it's a key crystallisation of trust. A trust is, in essence, an office. You may not have ever heard that definition before. I hadn't, but it's there. An office being the trustee. Formed by an oath to the terms of the trust and done before witnesses to take possession of certain rights and perform certain obligations. That is what a trust is. Now, if you go and look at all the definitions that are around on trust, I sort of move around it. They always say a trust must have a trustee. Yes? You can't have a trust without a trustee. And now you know. You can't have an office without a trust. And you can't have an office without an oath. So let's go back to that issue of the judge not taking an oath. If a judge doesn't take an oath, and an oath creates an office, then if a judge doesn't take an oath, is he a judge? Why? Because there's no office. You see how it all starts to get clearer? So, trustor, grantor, donor, settler, depending on the nature. Now, what's the highest form of trust? You ever seen someone put their hand on the Bible and do that? Swear before witnesses? Obama? Took him a couple of times, a few elections, he got it right in the end. That's a solemn trust. Swear on something sacred. Swear a divine, you create an unbreakable trust. And the three tests of a trust. Clear purpose, certainty of subject matter, good faith and oath of trustee.
What happens if someone doesn't actually believe in that?
Well, what do you think? We'll come back to it, but think about if they don't believe. If it's not good faith, then it fails the test. It's not a trust, is it? Yeah? That's what that is. Okay. The highest trust, the highest trust possible, is the office of man or the office of woman. Now, I pay tribute to those that have been speaking for a long, long time. They may not have had it all clear in their mind, but they knew that first and foremost we are a man or we are a woman. They go to court and the judge says, "Who are you?" "Call me man. I'm in the office of man." It is the highest trust. Why? Yes, first person, spot on. First person. Why? In the case of Ucadia, because people can walk around it and confuse it, we formalise this. We don't claim it as Ucadia, but we help formalise it so that there is a record of it, a proof of it. Yeah? That's all. And we do that in the Gazette. We do that by saying that when you redeem your member number and prove the existence of the Divine Trust and your live-born record and your oath, then you've proven the office of man and woman. So your live-born record in your Gazette is proof that you are the office of man and woman. You don't need it. If you know who you are and you know the Bible and you can demonstrate what the Bible says, then that is one. Or Buddhist texts or the Quran or any other holy text that speaks in terms of who and what we are. But if you want a simplified version, then when you when you redeem your member number, then you are proving with your documentation that you are the office of man and office of woman. And no one can challenge that. No one. I'll take questions at the end because we'll go through. All right. No priest, judge, government body, rule, edict, demand, spell, curse can deny that the office of man or the office of woman are the highest offices on the planet. Okay. What is in the state? An office. An office again, different type of. This time an executor or general executor. Formed by an oath to the laws of the realm, which may be your will and testament. Yeah? Your will and testament's the laws of the realm, isn't it? It's the highest law of the realm. And done before witnesses. You do your will and testament before witnesses. Yeah? To take possession of certain rights and perform certain obligations. So an estate has the right of title and interest in there. And the height is the realm, kingdom and country. The executor makes an oath to there. Okay? By the way, all these slides will be up on the website link that I mentioned earlier. So, okay, what is title? Big issue. We deal with title all the time. Legal title, equitable title. What is title? It's two things. A valid inscription in an asset register, a roll, register, and a certificate of proof of title. So it's two things. Yeah? Crucial to their system. What Henry VIII did was he introduced a whole series of roles. Manor roles, government roles. He put people in positions. They called them custos rotalorum. A title that was resurrected from the times of the Roman times. The custos rotalorum used to be the keeper of the slave rolls. And under Henry VIII, they brought it back in, the head of the slave rolls. And today, we still have custos rotalorums right throughout states and governments all around the world. So, the first thing of title is a record itself. The record itself on the roll is the legal or ownership title, the legal title or ownership. Okay, that's the first. That's legal title. That record is legal title. So, when you've got a home or you've got a car and it gets recorded in one of their or an estate roll, that primary record, that primary claim is legal title, the highest title there is. Follow? Yeah? Now, if there is a dispute between records, then it becomes a matter of right of claim or claim of right, and who has the right. Yeah? So if the office of man or the office of woman has the first right emanating from you for things like name, Who do you think has the natural right over the name? Right. So when the estate is perfected against the trust from the office of man, then that estate is going to have the natural claim of right over the name if it perfects it correctly. Yes? You see the power of doing this properly? Yeah? That's why we need to talk about records and managing your estate and getting your affairs in order. You follow? Okay. And a certificate of title is the authority, and that's the equitable title. And what is a certificate? A certificate is an extract from that onto that. And that's what your birth certificate is. It's an extract on to make the equitable title. All right? Okay. What is a corporation? Well, this model is what is a corporation sole. I mean, you can do an aggregate corporation. I'm interested in showing you the highest form of corporation. The corporation sole is the highest form of corporation there is. And what is a corporation sole? It's when the officer director, formed by an oath to the company's constitution and done before witnesses to take possession of certain rights and perform duties. They're the highest forms of corporation. So you could have a charitable corporation sole. Yeah? Okay. What is a fund? Useful to know. The hypothecation of the value of title, there's our certificate of title again, and underwriting of payments. So we'll go through how a fund, and this is from the 1540s when they started doing this, yeah? When the first quarterly exchequer, the first bank systems were being introduced into England as the first time that a nation or a kingdom privatised its assets for banking. There was one in France, there was a few other places at the same time. So we have first here, we have the trust deed or constitution or memorandum of articles. So trust deed for a trust, constitution or will and testament for an estate, memorandum of articles for a corporation, lodged with the bank as the fiduciary terms. The deed proves the entity is lawful and commerce can occur. Then a certificate is deposited with the bank into an account, and the certificate is basically proof, it's property. Yeah? Now when the value of certificate is permitted to be negotiable and then is endorsed by the signature and instruction, it is liquefied. That is, it's permitted to be hypothecated into money. So liquefaction is basically to take this and estimate a value and place it into an account. Now you cannot liquefy a birth certificate. And that's one of the first things people say, oh, that's great, I'm going to get my birth certificate, I'll go to the bank. No. Well, we're not the first to think of that. I say to people, you can't do that because the certificate is not permitted. The one who issues it, the government does not allow you or the bank, the system they control, to liquefy. Yeah? Similarly, you can't take Ucadia documents and go and liquefy. Well, we don't permit the liquefaction. Now, I know that's frustrating, but there is middle ground. Get your house in order, get your estate in order, get your certificates of your estate, and yes, you can liquefy rights brought in. Now, what's one of the most valuable rights that you can liquefy when you start moving in? Your name. Your name is an asset. And you can certainly start to liquefy some of the rights given that they are trading on your name, moving money on your name, doing things in your name. So you're not sitting there without any ability. But you can't certainly liquefy your birth certificate, and you certainly can't liquefy documents from Ucadia, which are proof of the highest trust. But when you start to get your estate in order and start to move certificates of your estate into order, then there are valuable assets that are entrusted to you, or you have a natural right to claim, that have value to the system. Follow? So what does the bank do? The bank determines the value and it enters the value in the account ledger, and then the bank will issue its own paper as guarantee or numbers in an account for payment of money. Now that certificate could be a banknote. Now it could be actually Australian currency or US dollars or whatever it is. This system applies to doing something now or having your estate in order, that system of funds is basically how banking works. Okay? The will and testament. I copped a lot of flack and still cop a lot of flack for this. I know it's a big document, and I know it was a big stretch to sort of look at the will and testament as something beyond just, you know, what happens when I die. But I want to say these two things on it, and then we'll move on, because I've got audios and documents, and there's a lot of links on this. The will and testament is universally recognised as a right of all men and women. It is a right that you are able to use. And a will and testament is more than just an instruction for funeral or disposal of property. It is the law of the estate. It's the law of your estate. That if you don't define, the system will define for you, and is quite happy, in fact wants to keep defining the law of your estate for you. Because if you abandon those rights, then you prove you're delinquent. If you remain delinquent, then you are giving them the out to do everything they're doing. You're giving them the reason, the excuse. It is the constitution of the body politic. It is also the mind of the persons. A person's a fiction. How do we know the mind of the person? Well, one of two ways. Either you abdicate your responsibility and allow the court to determine the mind of the person, which the judge, as the executor de son tort of your estate, is more than happy to determine the mind of the person. I think the mind of the person wants to go to prison. Fine, they're happy to do that. The mind of the person has to be, by definition, fiction. The will and testament is the highest proof of the mind of the person. And the person and covenant between man and woman and the divine creator. Now, this last one is absolutely vital. People say to me, Ucadia sounds great, the idea of Ucadia sounds great, you've done all this work, you've done all these codes, you've written these documents, you know, there's things like Pactum de Singularis Caelum. Who gives it authority? You know, where does the authority come from? You know, did a lightning bolt come down? You know, did an angel come before you? You know, give us the reason. And the answer is this. When you form your will and testament, and the body of law that's been created to show that you are not a slave, you're not a lunatic, you're not a ward, you're not a thing, no one stands between you and the divine, no one. Not me, no one. And that you have a right to be here. And that the property of you, your name, your body, your mind, your spirit is yours. When you perfect your will and testament, you are forming a sacred and unbreakable covenant between you and the divine. Far more powerful than the New Testament. Far more powerful than the Old Testament. Far more powerful than the Old and the New Testament combined. Okay. Coat of arms of the estate. If you've got questions, what do things mean? Well, I'll take it off line. But there are certain things that you can do, certain things that you need to do in order to prove in law that you have taken control of your affairs as a state of one, as a nation of one. And one of those is to present your coat of arms. Now, what is your coat of arms? Coat of arms has more than just the design value. It is the embodiment of the sovereign virtues. It is the embodiment of the values that you subscribe, of who and what you are, of where you come from. That's why you have a motto. It is the claim of right. It is the embodiment of the claim of right and ancestry. And it is also a symbol of authority endorsement. Now, have you heard of the word endorse before in banking? Endorsement? In heraldry, if your coat of arms is perfected, that is endorsement. That is the endorsement. So if the coat of arms is present on an instrument and it is a coat of arms that complies with the traditions of heraldry that they defined then that coat of arms itself is all that endorsement requires. Doesn't need someone else to put a stamp on it, doesn't need permission. The existence of the coat of arms itself is the endorsement of legitimacy. So can you imagine now, when you see a document that comes out and has the coat of arms on there, a proper coat of arms, like this, 2 symbols rampant, the design here, there must be 2 animals. Rampant means they're on their hind, facing one another, with at least one of the 8 symbols that's called the pale. A pale is a stake. A stake is a claim. You ever put a stake in the ground? You ever heard that? Claim a stake. Yeah? There's claim of right in the word. The symbolism in here is a symbolism of a valid spiritual and temporal claim. That's all it is. It's just how those elements combine. And then the motto. Okay? I'll come back to these things if you want questions later. Okay. And the great seals of the estate. Now, I know in the past we've all got excited by the lower symbols, but that's the highest symbol there is. Now, I want to sometimes put distance between Ucadia and say to people, that's always been known as the highest seal of the office of man or the office of woman. And it is. There's nothing in Ucadia that is stronger than the thumbprint of a man or woman. So it's how you use these tools. The Great Seal of your state, the Privy Seal, the Registrar Seal as seals. Okay. And then we have we're going to go through how these things work. And we have the manor roll. Now remember I said to you that title begins with a record of a claim in a register, and that if you have natural rights and you take control of your own affairs, would it follow then, if you manage your registers correctly, then those registers are higher than any government register for your rights? Does that make sense? Yeah? You can't claim things that you have no claim over. We can try, rather that people don't, but there are certain things that are inalienable rights that belong to you, that should be yours to administer, that you need to administer. If you don't, the system will administer it for you. Well, this is the purpose of a manor roll. That's all a manor roll is. Manor rolls were created by the Carolingians in the 8th century as a way of restoring law and order across Europe, because there was a complete lack of records, there was a complete collapse of property law, and the Carolingians came up with a rule system that's been the underpinning of Western Roman law since then on how claims of right are perfected. So, manor roll, series of large A4 or larger stitch bound, very important stitch bound, blank pages. Why stitched? Has to be stitched to prevent fraud. If there's any possibility that you can insert a layer or external layer, it can be fraud. That's why it's going to be stitch bound. The fact that it's in a long roll makes no difference. The fact that it's pages stitch bound in a book, no difference. They're the same form, just different arrangement. Title page. So the first thing on a manor roll is title page. Identify the manor roll and estate, first page of the book. Then the verso. The verso is the dedicatory prayer and oath and seal. So it's really exemplifying why you're here and showing that you have respect, that there is a connection between you and the Divine Creator. It doesn't have to be a Christian prayer. It doesn't have to be a Buddhist prayer. It doesn't have to be an Islamic prayer. It can be any prayer if it has value to you and meaning to you and a connection to you and the Divine. Recto is the concluding prayer and the last page of the book. Again, the seal. And then page numbering. Every page needs to be numbered consecutively. Now, over time, you will have more than one manor roll. But some sections will remain as the original and other sections will need more space and will be continuation. So when you start on 199, you start the next book, will be 200. So there will never be a page in your manor roll with the same number. Okay? What are the sections of the manor roll? First section, Genesis. Now, it sounds funny to do this, but if you think about it, how does one prove one is a man are not an animal in argument. Now, if you take the Western Roman model, that we all originate from Adam and Eve. I'm not here to... I've done discussions on the origin of human species, so I've got, opinions there myself. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's perfect this argument. Under their system, Adam and Eve are regarded as man and woman. They are the original man and woman. Okay? If you can show that your claim begins that you are descended from Adam and Eve and not from an ape, chimpanzee, orangutan, or anything else that you can show, and where you have gaps, there are dots. You might start Adam and Eve and go ... 1960, because there's nothing in between. That's fine. That's fine. The day you were born, still it shows a continuation. I am descended from Adam and Eve. When your genesis, when your genealogy makes that claim, no one can claim that you are an animal, a creature, or a thing. Can they? No one. It's over, as far as that argument's concerned. So do you see, if you don't make that claim, someone can argue the opposite. You see the danger? I know they shouldn't, but they do.
To consider ourselves as animals. Sorry, I'm an animal. I'm a human animal. I don't see it.
Okay, well, in law, one wishes to present oneself ideally from the reason of mind, even though we are a hybrid of many things, of which we are, of course, a species of animal. Yes. But in law, we want to come from the reason of mind in law. And the reason of mind is that we are an intelligent being. We are sapient. And so we need to be very careful that we don't allow ourselves to be called just human or just a thing, and therefore surrender our control to the court. Because that's the argument.
You're saying we are just human, we're not animal.
We're saying here that we demonstrate that we are descendant of man and woman, and that we are more than animal, in order to disprove anyone claiming that we are just a thing, a slave. Now, again, the reason I interacted there is because it is important. People who listen to this will say, well, hold on a second, of course I'm physical, of course I'm an animal. We're not saying that. We're saying we are dealing with a system that has lost its way, law is broken down, we went through that, there's no rule of law, there's no justice, we've got to repair. We're trying to make sense of our own space. We're trying to find how we can survive and hopefully have a positive influence. Here, we demonstrate that by showing the system we know its foundations. We know what rule of law is, and we are taking proper care of our own affairs. That's what I'm trying to show. Any more questions on that? I'd like to take at the end, please. Then we have Register of Birth, Deaths and Marriages, okay, because they're claims. The system claims your parents. The system claims you. The system claims your grandparents. That's why they produce annuities. Bring those claims out of their assumption. Bring them into your estate. If your parents have died, then take control of those claims and bring them into your register. Because they're your parents. They're not the system's parents, they're your parents. Bring them into your claim. Register of Claims, Rights and Titles. Claim of name. Other claims in there. Claims of property. Things that you have right of use of. Bring those claims into your register. An inventory. Every year, under the Carolingian rule, you needed to produce an inventory. That's what a stock take is. We have a system that places an emphasis that you keep track of every cent, every dollar. Okay. That's an absurdity, I tell you now. That is an absolute, unmitigated absurdity. The purpose of estates were always to take care and be aware of the things, not just how those things were moved around. So if you have property, how many shirts do you have? Have you got a car? What sort of car is it? Do you have a home that you use? What sort of home are you dealing with? Do you have artwork? That was the inventory. That was what was important. Not how many dollars and cents. The memorandum was the tracing of the use of that property. And in accounting, it went from memorandum, then across to the ledger, and then to the summary. So the memorandum was always the base. The memorandum kept the detail that you purchased X number of shirts or you sold X and Y, but it was always the context of the trade. And then court rolls for disputes, resolutions, orders and treaties, and register of grants, warrants, writs and consents. Now, that seems like a lot of work. And it is quite a bit of work. But think of the flip side. Can we really walk with one foot in one side and one foot in the other? Can we really engage in their system and abdicate all of that to them and then argue that they are unjust to us? We can highlight lack of due process, and we could avoid all of this and simply highlight later on proof of lack of due process. We could also just simply say, I know I'm an office of man, and dispense with all of this. But if you do take the time to take control of your affairs, then it is possible to mitigate those areas where you're under attack from revenue, you're under attack from tax, you're under attack from all the ways that they want to take your energy, steal your energy, reduce your energy, and say, these are the bounds by which we engage respectfully. It's entirely up to you. Now, one of the key areas of an estate is chancery. And in a chancery, this is where you record and keep your registers. A filing cabinet is a perfectly good chancery. I mean, that's ultimately what a chancery meant. It was a protected space. A lockable filing cabinet is an excellent place to store original records. And this is where we store registers of births, claims, miscellaneous documents, court docs, grants, warrants. And this is what we do. We enter the name of the document in its register. We stamp the document with the registrar seal, sign it, record the number, and we store the document in sequence of received in proper location. Okay? Coloured paper. Have you heard about different coloured paper, seen different coloured paper? And had the query of what it means? Yeah? Okay. So let me make it clear. White is original. Yellow is the receipt. Blue is for the agent, the trustee. Pink is for the thing.
That just referred to like an invoice book?
That's why an invoice book is the same as that, yeah. Why do they have colours? In their system, they have a trick that they do to us called enclosure. You ever played paper, rock, scissors? It's their paper, rock, scissors, yeah? And literally that's what as childish as it is, that's exactly what it is. It's enclosure. And how they work is this way. Enclosure is when another estate or corporation claims the right to enclose or claim jurisdiction or right to take possession of an instrument. And that's when you think they ignore you, they're happy for you to think that. What their system works on now is enclosure, which is bring it on, we'll absorb it all, we'll stamp it all, we'll claim it, we control it, and you can't do anything about it. Why? Because we keep sending things on white paper. So the colour coding was their way of stopping different parts of their system abusing where issues of jurisdictional authority were not allowed to be stepped over. So they invented a colour code system in the 19th century when they were rampantly raping and pillaging and stealing to ensure that in certain cases there wouldn't be this carryover. And that's why the colours are used. Okay? Okay. Seals and signs. Now, people get confused by when to use something, when not to use something, so I want to make this clear. I'm going to have a quick drink too, just quick water. Thank you. Okay. All right. There's a lot on that page, sorry. Okay. So, the seal, the office of man, is the most powerful seal. We said that before, yes? Okay. Because it's the most powerful seal, should it be used with the absolute minimum, given it's so powerful? Yeah? And it's really only used for internal inbound estate documents and trust. You never, ever put a thumbprint seal on any document you send them ever again. And if we did that in the past, we were learning. If we've said that in the past, I'm sorry. From here on in, please make it clear you don't do that.
When you're doing what? Don't do that when you're doing what?
Yeah, internal, inbound only. Don't ever send a thumbprinted document. Okay? And I'm apologising for getting to here and learning when not to do something, yeah? Because we did talk about on autos in the past about this, yeah? Great Seal. The Great Seal is for the will and testament, charters, writs, patents and deeds. It's the highest seal below the office of man. It's the proof of the estate. The Privy Seal is the proof of government of the estate. That's why it's privy. It's the proof of government, so it's the government seal. It's used for certificates, letters, warrants, licences and full powers. Yeah? The sign of the General Executor, red pen, so Frank R or whatever the signature is, as a witness to will, charter, writs, patents, deeds and warrants. It's used for those. Yeah? Sign of the agent, as witness to licences, letters and certificates. And I'm going to be clear on agent roles here in a moment. I'm just trying to get you through it. And then person. Have you ever got a letter from the government where they don't sign it, they just put the name? It's actually a signature. It's a signature of a thing, a legal person. Yeah? You can do the same. And you'll need to sometimes. You don't, if you're sending something back as an agent, you don't need to sign it. A signature is a granting of a right. Yeah? Primarily, that's why they want you always to sign it and why they always want the original signature. If you're writing back to the government in response to something, you don't have to sign it. They don't. Because under their laws, the name in capitals is equivalent to a signature. Okay? So, now here's another trick. You ever wondered about positioning on paper? Maddening? Frustrating? Confusing? Okay, well let's eliminate that frustration. Left. Left is for the debtor, for the defendant, for the trustee, for the agent. Okay? Right is for the creditor, the prosecutor, the grantor, the principal. The middle. The middle is for the judge, the ecclesiastical, the mendicant, the non-combatant. Mendicant is one that swears an oath to poverty and demonstrates through that oath that they have clean hands.
So like a monk, almost.
We'll come back to mendicant, but it's like being a monk. But clean hands, you cannot prove clean hands better by being a mendicant. Okay? But by what I mean by that, you know that the wealthiest people in the world claim they own nothing. You know that. It's all in trust. Yeah? If you have the right of use of a 300-foot yacht, palaces, kitchens and staff, do you really need to own it?
No.
Right. Okay. Okay. So this is the positioning of things. All right? We'll keep going. All right. We're going to just deal with some accounting and then we can wrap up this session. This is just, again, basics of estates, funds, corporations. So I think we're doing well in catching up some time. Okay. I'm doing this because I want to show you the origins of the accounting system and how it evolved through stages. So it all has to balance up. Okay? There are two levels always in their system. There's the private side and the public side. And then there's again the private-public side within those. When they invented their accounting system, they conceived this idea that sin wasn't simply a transgression, it was a debt in heaven. It was an accounting entry in heaven. And Jesus and the saints, through their love and through their blood being the currency, would offset our debt by forgiving, effectively from the credits of the treasury of heaven. Now this is the doctrine and the origin of accounting, that under this model, God is a Venetian accountant. Okay, so the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs became the currency to offset our transgression. So in heaven, when you do a sin, a transgression, it's automatically cancelled out. That's heaven. But earth needed to also balance out. And this is where they got really nifty. So here, in order to balance that may balance in heaven, but you haven't balanced with heaven yet, have you? So you're down in this quadrant down here. So you need to confess, penance and promise. Penance is the origin of penalty. Fine. Fines are penance, yeah? So that's why people who issue fines can't issue a fine unless it's a judicial or ecclesiastical penance. If they do, it's unlawful. All fines are unlawful unless they're through a court or through an ecclesiastical authority. So here, confession. Confession balances out the debt. And then over here, the indulgence, the monetization of sin, is the origin of money. And that's what the church got for the monetization of sin. And the balance overall is zero. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Just turn that off. Great. Okay. So that was the 1400s. Now we go to the 1600s, and indulgences are making money. Do you remember Martin Luther? Martin Luther indulgences? They didn't stop. They just got bigger. Yeah? The indulgences have never stopped. They've just become streamlined. So here we have the ecclesiastical again. Now it's the estate. Yeah? Now we've got this formalised thing here on the English model of the estate. So here we confess, penance and promise and the indulgence now, and deeds. Now, in order for that, we have use of exchequer bills. Yeah? So the exchequer bills are issued on the basis of our promise to work. Now we see, under the English model, money being issued on the sweat of the slaves, the voluntary slaves that we are. Yeah? Okay? And that's why they needed the registers, the custos rotolorums. And then in exchange for that, Commonwealth rights were provided. Yeah? So that's the origin of the Commonwealth. Welfare, the origin of welfare. Commonwealth means welfare. And again, it balances out. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Thank you. Now we get to the 1800s where all the wheels fall off. Now remember, the 1800s is where we see 10 million laws and 100 million laws, and the bankers running the world, and all the history gets corrupted, and they just can't help themselves. Yeah? Okay. Now this is where you see that they lose the plot. Okay, the global banking model, based on all non-rich people being animals in this, and debt slaves, with right to sell their effort in exchange for welfare. So the promise to pay to work, now corporations, no longer ecclesiastical, just corporates, against the birth certificate, share annuity, yeah? So they balance out. And then we get to use private banknotes. And what should happen is that there is, for the fact that we work in banknotes and annuities and services, that there's a balance. There should be a balance. Yeah? Yeah. But there isn't a balance. Because the balance outstanding is -1 plus compounding interest. Because they haven't been providing the services, and they've been compounding this value here. So they've blown up their own accounting. And it's been broken for over 150, 160 years. So since the 1930s, global financial systems ceased to be based on any measure of financial accounting. There is no longer any global financial accounting. It's all a lie. Because now there is no competence or rules. It is the largest and most corrupt Ponzi scheme in history. Okay? But now you can see why. Okay? Now you see the distillation of it. Okay. And that's that. Ponzi scheme is where someone who controls it takes money out by getting people to continuously come into it. So it's basically, how Ponzi works is the people who are in the system first continue to make money so long as new people come in. But the people coming in on the promise that they make money will never make money, because the only value of the profit is taking their input and claiming it to be an output.
Is that referred to like a pyramid scheme?
It's a pyramid scheme.
Or, capitalisation of assets.
Or the stock exchange, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Federal Reserve.
Like
Or Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve. They're all Ponzi schemes. Okay, so that is the summary of estates.
So that relies on growth.
Always relies on new gullible people coming in to keep it going. Yeah.
There's always people born every day.
Yeah, I was going to say, we...
Every day. Every day. Again, now the exciting thing is we're going to have a break, but if we can keep it shorter than we planned, if we can just do it for 10 minutes, would be great. I know we said about lunch, but when we get to session 3, we're going to start talking about the positive move back. There were positives in our estate, but we're going to talk about some very practical things about our own affairs. So, thank you.
Coat of arms.